Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about the best national parks to visit if you have mobility issues.
All right, guys, so one of the things that we notice as we're traveling around, especially to the national parks, is I always take note of what parks have as far as accessibility for those with mobility issues or in wheelchairs. My mom is disabled, and so I always kind of think about that as we're traveling, like, oh, would she be able to come here? And so that's one of the reasons why we put this video together, to kind of help you out if you guys are looking at doing a vacation coming up. Then this will help you to kind of plan a little bit as far as where you want to go, that's going to make things a little bit easier for you, and that you'll have a good time.
Exactly, and there's so many great national parks that have great places to go, and so we're going to run through those now. So the very first one is Arches National Park, and this is a great park to head to if you have mobility issues, because you can enjoy this park just from the car. It is probably one of the most beautiful drives in the country. Just driving the park, you will be floored at what you see. And then you can get out at a lot of these stops and walk a little bit of the way and see stuff there too, because when we went there it was pretty hot and we didn't really feel like doing the full hike on some of them. We did the Delicate Arch, which honestly that took the life out of me, and I didn't want to do anything after that because it was a really tough hike. So a lot of the other stops, we just got out and kind of saw the viewpoint from the car, and you can see a lot at Arches National Park from the road.
Yeah, it's actually really amazing how much you can see and enjoy. So you could just drive that loop if you wanted to, if you didn't want to bother with getting out of the car. Like you said, if it's like really hot and you don't want to get out, there's plenty to enjoy from the car. But you can also camp at Devil's Garden, which we camped at the campground there. They do have an accessible spot there, campground, and that is number 4H, which is ADA compliant. And then there's parking. The Park Avenue viewpoint is also accessible, as well as the Balance Rock viewpoint and that picnic area there as well. You can also have access to Wolf Ranch Cabin and the Rock Art panel. And then the Delicate Arch viewpoint down below is also accessible, which is fantastic. And then I thought it was kind of interesting too. The first 100 yards of the trail to the windows it's hard packed dirt, but it is accessible. You can get on there. You're gonna get a little bit dirty, obviously, especially with it being so dry, but you can access it because it is really hard packed. So you can definitely access that area. And then you can also access the amphitheater in the campground too, which they do have programs there. So you can easily park there and then make your way over to the amphitheater too.
The next park that is accessible for visitors is Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And another reason this one is accessible is the main thing you will do at Theodore Roosevelt National Park is the driving tour. And you're just going to be driving this big loop, and there's viewpoints you can get out at. And yeah, you can walk a little bit if you want, but most of that is going to be accessible as well to you. So that is a perfect one to go to if you have that mobility issue.
Yes, and one of the great things that you want to see at this park is at the Visitor Center, and that is, Teddy Roosevelt Cabin, which is right behind the Visitor Center. So the Visitor Center itself is accessible, but so is the cabin. It does have a ramp at the entrance, so you can access that and get up into the cabin there. And then they also do have, at the Cottonwood Campground, they have 4 accessible campsites, as well as the restrooms. At the Roundup Horse Camp, they have accessible toilets and the picnic pavilion. And then, as you mentioned, we can do the Scenic Drive Loop, the Skyline Vista, River Woodland Overlook, Badlands Overlook, Buck Hill, Beef Corral, Dog Town, which was really fun to watch them popping out. It's like whack-a-mole, but you don't whack them, you just see them popping up. That's fun to watch. And then also Wind Canyon and the trail parking area and Boycourt Overlook there as well. So there's really quite a bit here that's accessible. Like you said, this is probably one of the most accessible parks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another one that's accessible also in South Dakota is Wind Cave. So yeah, plan a trip to South Dakota. Wind Cave is great because there is, again, another loop road you're going to do where you're looking for nature and you're going to be seeing prairie dogs from the car, and you can just kind of drive at your own pace and see the wildlife and the nature interact with it. We saw a wolf, we saw prairie dogs, we saw wild turkeys, we saw bison, all from the car. So Wind Cave is something definitely you can do that is accessible.
Yeah, it's great to just kind of pair your North Dakota, South Dakota trips together and put these two parks together. There are 2 wheelchair accessible sites at Wind Caves, B2 and D3 as well. As at the natural entrance as well is also that campground there. That's where you can find those campsites. And then the natural entrance does have a paved path all the way down to the natural entrance. Now you won't be able to actually get to the natural entrance itself, but you can see it. And you will be able to feel it actually, because you'll be able to get that close to it, which is good. You'll at least get to kind of experience it. And then there's the scenic loop drive, and you'll get to see the Prairie Dog Town there as well. That drive is really quite beautiful. Like I said, it's amazing. You get to see all kinds of wildlife. You have absolutely no idea what you're going to encounter, but you are going to see some sort of wildlife on this drive.
Yeah. Another great accessible national park is Badlands National Park in South Dakota. And it is a beautiful park that, again, you can just drive right through. Most of the sites you can see from the road. There's pullouts to come into. And there's a little bit of hiking. You could climb up on the rock formations if there's someone with you that wants to do that. But most of it you can see just from the car or just a few feet out of the car.
Yes, and again, you can access Wall Drug on one end when you come out of the park if you're driving straight through. So there's a lot and plenty of accessible activities at Wall Drug as well. Yeah. So really, you can put a lot together in that area. So Badlands, both visitor centers are accessible with ramp entrances as well as reserved parking. Cedar Pass Campground has 1 accessible spot on the group loop and 2 spots in the main campground. Nearly all the scenic overlooks are accessible, as well as the fossil exhibit and the windows trails. The first section of the Door and Cliff Shelf trails are also accessible. So there's a lot here.
The next park that we're going to talk about is maybe my favorite national park in the whole country, and it's Grand Teton National Park.
That's right.
And on top of the areas that are designated as accessible, there are some amazing areas you can go to that aren't really designated it, but you can get there. So, for instance, at Oxbow Bend, which is one of the best places you can watch the sunset, there is places you can go down by the river. That's not even the best place to watch the sunset at Oxbow Bend. The best place to watch the sunset is in the parking lot. And on our blog, I've actually got a picture of the exact best spot to take a picture from, which I've taken many pictures from that spot. And you can just walk over there, set up your chair, camping chair. If you had a wheelchair, you could put that there. You could just sit there, watch the sunset. And by the time the sun sets, everyone will be crowded around you, which is what always happens to us, because once you get there, everyone's going to realize that's the very best spot, and everyone will be lined up behind you. So if you want to find out where that is, go to our blog, groundedlifetravel.com, and we've got a post on that, where to sit at Oxbow Bend.
Yes, and all of the tactile and interactive exhibits are accessible, as well as the visitor center at Grand Teton. The Moose area multi-use pathway is for motorized wheelchairs only. Jenny Lake area trails, Jackson Lake Dam, have a paved overlook, as well as at Coulter Bay. Now, Coulter Bay Village has 2 accessible cabins. Jackson Lake Lodge has 20 accessible guest rooms. Jenny Lake Lodge has 2 accessible rooms, and the Headwater Lodge at Flag Ranch has 5 accessible rooms, and but they don't have the roll-in showers on those. So there are lots of places that you can stay in Grand Teton as well that will give you accessible rooms and accessible other amenities as well.
Okay, moving on. The next one is the Grand Canyon, and the Grand Canyon, beautiful. It's, if you've never been there before, it's, you drive up and there's just a bunch of overlooks around the rim of the canyon, so they are pretty accessible, and there's not going to be a whole lot you're missing out on there. So what are the best places to see the canyon from?
Yes, so what's really cool about the Grand Canyon is that all of the shuttle buses are wheelchair accessible. You can get a scenic drive accessibility permit at the entrance gate, which allows you to drive up to places that most of the public doesn't have access to. So that's kind of a unique thing that you can get at the Grand Canyon that you can't get at a lot of places, and you'll be able to drive up to places that the rest of us cannot access. Now, you will have to have an accessible permit for your vehicle to show as proof when you get to the entrance, but that's a great perk to have offered by the park, especially at a park like Grand Canyon, where some of the things are going to be a little bit longer hike, or there's not as many reserved spots for parking up a little bit closer.
Yeah, I love those parks where they let you go somewhere that other people won't. So the same is true at Yosemite.
Exactly.
A few places you can drive. A few places where the public can't, and the public has to walk 2 miles.
Yes.
So that's a little bit of an advantage there. Next one is going to be Joshua Tree, which is something that we like to mention to people. Joshua Tree is mostly a driving park, but if you're driving in from the south entrance, you're not going to see the Joshua trees as quickly as if you're driving in from the north. So when you're coming in, you want to come in through 29 Palms if you want to see them right away. And that's the north end. Then you're going to see Joshua trees right away, and they're going to be everywhere, and they're going to be big and beautiful. And there's just a bunch of pull-offs you can go to, get out and just look at them and see them even right from the car. So Joshua Tree is very accessible. It
is, and it starts even at the very before you even get into the park. Oasis of Mara Trail and Oasis Visitor Center right there near 29 Palms have paved trail and are accessible. The Bahada Natural Trail near the south entrance. There are a few spots where there's a little bit of deep sand, but you can maneuver pretty much most of that trail. Caprock Nature Trail at the junction of Park Boulevard and Keys View Road and Lower Keys View Overlook also have accessibility, but the views might be a little bit obscured because of like signs and vegetation. It just depends on what's growing and if they're putting up special signs and things like that. You can also enjoy some of the Cholla Cactus Garden as well. There's parking. There's accessible parking spot, and then there's also a ramp up onto the sidewalk there to get into the garden. There's also plenty of wheelchair accessible restrooms. Jumbo Rock Campground has one accessible space, number 122, which is set aside. And then at Black Rock Campground, they do have one side as well, and that is number 61, that is set aside for accessibility. Now, the only bad thing about that particular spot is there is no electricity available at that one.
Well, as you can see, the National Park System has done a lot to improve the accessibility of the parks. So these are just a few of the best ones out there. There's many more that are accessible also, but these are kind of the ones that have taken the best measures. And we recommend you go visit some of these and enjoy what the national parks have to offer. We hope this video has been helpful for you, and if it was, please like the video, subscribe, and don't forget to go visit the blog at groundedlifetravel.com, and we will see you on the next video.